of these 18 country research. And this work, as Isabel said, it was inspired by the bank's twin goals of ending extreme poverty and boosting shared prosperity, in addition to the Sustainable Development Goals, which also have obviously an emphasis on poverty reduction, equity, and inclusion. And so when we set out on this initiative, we asked ourselves 4 questions across these 18 countries, which was, who and where are the poor, or those that we call that live in the bottom 40% of the income distribution in a country? What's their level of access and the quality of that access to water supply and sanitation services, and how does that compare to the non-poor and those that live in the upper income distribution of the country? And then the third question that we asked was, well, what are the linkages between inadequate water supply and sanitation and hygiene and health and nutrition at the country level? At a global level, we kind of have evidence-based, but at a country level, we really wanted to take this information and try to translate it so that it could be used at an advocacy level. And then the fourth question that we asked was, what are the binding constraints to improve service delivery? And trying to understand, how do you improve service? Why are things stuck in improving services to the poor? And so what did we learn from this initiative? I think there's one sort of key takeaway message from this for us, which is that we collectively need to think and work differently when we're looking at these problems. And in thinking and working differently, there's sort of 3 messages that come out. One is that to reach the SDGs, the estimates are that a 4-fold increase is needed in spending, which is, in even some countries, it's going to be much higher than that, which makes it almost unattainable for many countries. As you heard, if you were in the previous session, our senior director Guang was saying that public resources need to be spent much more efficiently. So currently, often subsidies in urban water services are not reaching the poor because the poor aren't connected. So who are those subsidies going to? Well, they're going to the wealthy, and that's a waste of public resources that aren't reaching the poor segments of the population. So while more resources are needed, what we argue through this report is that they need to be better targeted and allocated to reach the poor. So that's one thing. The second message that comes out of this when we look across these 18 countries, which range from fragile and conflict states such as Haiti and DRC to middle-income countries such as Indonesia and Panama, is that if you really want to have impact on human development outcomes such as childhood stunting, then you need a combination of water supply, sanitation, and health and nutrition programs in a much more coordinated manner. Now you can do these individually, and you can maybe achieve some modest reductions, but what our research shows is that actually when you do these in coordination, you get more than the sum of its parts. So you get more bang for your dollar when you actually go in concert rather than doing these individually. The third main message in thinking and working differently is that I think as development organizations, we need to better understand the gap between policy and implementation. So quite often, policy looks good on paper, but it's in actually implementation of the policy is where things go wrong. And so in this work, we tried to look at different reasons why there's a lack of policy implementation. And in that, we really started to work with, in thinking and working differently, we said, look, we need to expand our view of the world. And so we drew in colleagues who we typically don't work with, such as governance colleagues, that tend to focus on sort of upstream functions of government that as a water sector practitioner, you're focused more at the lower level, at the service delivery level. But there could be a whole slew of things on the upstream functions that are actually impeding why services aren't working. So as we were working with our governance colleagues, we began to appreciate that there's multiple facets that we need to better understand and that they need to better understand as well to sort of link service delivery with the larger government systems. And in that, for example, in accountability and trying to bridge the gap between policy and implementation, you take water quality, for example, which is invisible to the naked eye. And so if a citizen doesn't have information on water quality, then there's really no way that citizen can hold the provider or the local politician accountable for poor quality of services. So that's an example of how we started to think about bridging the gap between policy and implementation. Luis, is there anything that you want to add on that at all?
No, perhaps just to complement, I mean, in terms of the messages, I think that Craig already highlighted the key messages that we have from the report. But I want to emphasize that this wasn't a sort of a desk review. Basically, what we did was brand new analytical work in the countries. So this synthesis is basically the sum of 18 country reports. I mean, in each of country reports, we will use new data, new methods, new engagement, new partnership with other colleagues, and the report synthesize a little bit what we have been learning over the last 2 years. So it's not only about us rewriting whatever we are our prior, but basically going to the countries in discovery mode and trying to tease out and engage with the clients in terms of what are the new features that we should be talking about. And I think there's plenty of new bites on the findings that we got from each of the 18 countries.
And isn't it true that for now, for the first time, you are able to pinpoint where the poor live in much greater detail than the World Bank had information on before?
Definitely. I mean, so let me give you one example. Nigeria, that is a country that we have been working quite extensively. In fact, I was coming from having lunch with the minister from water resources. I mean, he was telling me, listen, before we didn't have this kind of information. Whenever he saw the map, in terms of getting some model for which we can pinpoint in 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer square, so what is our best estimate on lack of access to whatever parameter we are talking about, is quite striking. I mean, why this is important, it's not only for the sake of pointing out where people is, but it's speaking how we can plan accordingly, how we can set up priorities, where we should go in first and last. One of the things that we got in Nigeria, for instance, with this information, it was brand new data for Nigeria, is that only 40% of the people in rural areas have access to a reliable source within 30 minutes round trips. So 60% of the people had to walk more than 30 minutes to get water. But seriously speaking, whenever you unbundle this, you get that 30% of the rural population have access to a resource, a water resource, more than 4 hours away, right? So these kind of things, I mean, getting these kind of details, it's not only sort of shame for the sector in some of our country, but hopefully this will be triggering and provoking some sort of actions for planning accordingly.
And just to add on that, I think one of the things, going back to the point on this gap between policy and implementation, I think one of the things that we came to better appreciate, because often I think as water sector specialists, we often, there's a knee-jerk reaction to sort of pull off the shelf, well, here's a set of reform packages that, can work, do X, Y, and Z, and, if you follow this form, services should improve. And I think what we came to appreciate is that when you look at these government systems and the nuances between how governments are arranged, is that there's no one-size-fits-all solution, right? And that you have to tailor these interventions to the state capability and to the political context and understand the political economy of that particular country. Otherwise, you could propose a best, not to say that best practice solutions aren't feasible, but what we're saying is you don't start the conversation with best practice solutions. You start the conversation with understanding what's the problem in service delivery, and then try to work backwards with the client and understand, okay, why are these services failing? Why in rural Tanzania do 40% of rural water points, are they non-functional? What's causing that? It's not just a technical issue. It could be something to do with the intergovernmental fiscal transfer system and the resources that are coming from central to local government. It may be a HR issue that could be with the civil service. So again, it's about expanding. These are obviously complex issues, and what our takeaway is that in order to really address these complex issues, you just can't look at it from a water sector lens. You have to really sort of start to look at this from a multi-sectoral perspective.
One example that you used, I heard you use recently, was sometimes they just don't have gas in their cars to be a repairman to go out to these water points to repair some of these, and these are not some of these things that they're grappling with.
Right. So when we look at Mozambique, for example, there's very significant differences between the north and the south. When we started to dig into, with our governance colleagues, understanding how finances flow through the government. You know, the way that the government articulates a pro-poor policy is through its budget allocation formula and how it distributes its funds. But when we tried to understand how those funds are allocated, we realized that that budget allocation formula isn't adhered to. And so when you look at, visually, you look at a map, you see major disparities between certain regions of the country. And you know, so there's no necessarily simple answer to that, but you have to understand, you know, where does the shoe pinch and where might be the binding constraints in order to even start a dialogue on that particular issue.
Do we have any, since we have a representative of China, did you do an analysis on China?
Unfortunately, we don't have any analysis on China. Yeah.
Do
But
we-
you can maybe just, you said what you have found, and what suggestions will you give for the solutions? Do you have any?
What I think that perhaps is interesting, I mean, even whenever the report is primarily covering the 18 countries, the mix of the 18 countries give us sort of an spectrum on what we see, right? From extremely poor countries to countries that are a little more developed. We have India, for instance, in terms of large countries. So probably we believe humbly that some of these recommendations fit for many of the other countries too. Of course, whenever we get into the specifics, we had to perhaps to craft some of these messages. But still speaking, I think that the messages that we have for the pool of the 18 countries, we have been evolving on that. I mean, and we discovered that this even fit in some of the other countries that we didn't work on actual data, but probably we should be expecting similar kind of findings on some of the countries. So probably for China, some of these messages maybe resonate in the sector where they are.
But interestingly, why didn't you think of China? Because maybe you think China is better.
No, not really. I mean, still speaking,
You just choose 18 countries, right? Yeah.
This was sort of a selection. We couldn't afford to go to every single country.
Okay.
I mean, and in fact, originally the target was 12 countries. So then we expand. I mean, we try to put more emphasis on having a kind of a balanced mix from the different regions, right? So this eventually will leave some countries aside.
Why did you choose these specific countries?
So again, as Luis was saying, we wanted to, so there was an emphasis and probably an oversampling of South Asia and Africa, because that's where I would say the water and sanitation needs are most apparent. But we didn't want to just focus on those two regions, and so we tried to bring in Indonesia and East Asia, and in Latin America, you know, to bring in, you know, what are the different challenges even middle-income countries are facing. So, you know, you look at Panama, for example, you know, the income level is quite high. You know, but interestingly, even in Panama, there's clearly the indigenous populations are the ones being most left behind, which isn't, you know, a surprise. But when you look at the statistics, you know, they're very stark as far as the statistics on the indigenous populations and their levels of access. But even, probably more interestingly, in Panama, the city of Panama, the city center, even some of the water quality data, this is where like the richest populations reside, even some of the water quality data that was coming out of there was showing as like it wasn't as good as one would expect. So, you know, obviously there was a focus on, you know, this initiative again was inspired by, as I said, the bank's twin goals on ending extreme poverty and boosting shared prosperity, and so we were trying to sort of understand this. How do you improve services to the poor? But we weren't exclusive of just looking at low-income countries. We wanted to try to expand our view of middle-income countries as well, and where obviously there's poor everywhere.
So
in
you
all of our
suggest
countries.
that there should be either political or economic stress that money should be allocated to the poor. More money should be allocated to the poor.
I think one of the, if you want to go through the 3 recommendations, the targeting the policy gap, maybe one more time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, out of the three themes that come out of this is that yes, more resources are needed to reach these higher goals that the countries around the world have subscribed to. But we also know in many countries that's going to be unattainable because of the level of resources needed. And they'll have to sort of adapt those goals to their country context. But in doing so, resources need to be better targeted. So for example, in Niger,